county records, MLSs, tax assessments, all those data is pulled together and forms sort of the core of what we use to build Zestimate. Right? So we have data on the physical attributes of homes, right? How many bedrooms, how many bathrooms, what school districts are in the area. We also have data on tax assessments, right? What have taxes been paid, what have homes been assessed for in their area. And the most important piece of producing estimates is records of what homes have sold for in the area for the last 3 months, the last 6 months. And the first thing we do when we collect all this data is we start a process called cleaning. And cleaning is where we go through and try to make sure that the data we're using to build our models reflect sort of real on-the-ground transactions in reality. So to give you an example here, there are lots of records in our database where we see a mother who has sold her house to her son for $10. Right, we want to make sure we don't go through and see that sale and decide, hey, I guess the house must be worth $10. Right, so we have a whole team of folks that go through and sort of clean the data to make sure it represents what we call sort of arm's-length transactions. Once we finish the cleaning, we then start a process called training. And training is where we use sort of the latest in statistical modeling and machine learning to build a whole host of different models that try to think about the value, understand the value of homes, which areas are gentrifying, which areas aren't, what does demand look like for 2 bedrooms versus 3 bedrooms in different areas. Once we finish building these models, we then start a process called scoring. And scoring is where we combine the output of all these different models into the final estimate. And the way I like to think about scoring is kind of like a winemaker making a blended wine. Right? The winemaker decides how much Cabernet, how much Syrah to use. Similarly, we've built these models using all these different statistical techniques. And in between them all, we have what we call the meta model, kind of like this winemaker, deciding how to combine all these different opinions of what a house is worth. So to give you an example from California, we have one model that uses tax data to try to think about the value of homes. But as you guys know, because of Prop 13, there often isn't that much of a connection between what you pay in taxes and what your home is worth. Which means in California, when we produce these estimates, that winemaker, that meta model, knows to ignore the opinion of anything coming out of tax data. Whereas in Texas, where there's a closer connection between what you pay in taxes and what your home is worth, it might listen a little bit to the opinion of that model. The output of this process is this estimate. It's also a range around that estimate. So wherever you see this estimate in Zillow, you'll also see a range. And that's our way of sort of communicating to the consumer how confident we are in this estimate. Right? In some areas, there are lots of sales, homes are relatively similar. We're going to feel a little more confident about the opinion of our models. But in other areas, maybe there aren't that many sales for the last 6 months, or homes are relatively unique. We're going to feel a little less confident. And so we'll display that with a wider range around this estimate. The reality is, I mean, my team spends a huge amount of time looking at all this data. And if you spend that much time in it, you really start to understand all its limitations. When I was trying to buy a house a few years ago in Seattle, there were so many factors that were really important to me. You know, like how was the floor plan laid out? How much light did the kitchen get? Well, it's really hard to fit those factors in a spreadsheet. Right? And our algorithm certainly doesn't know about them. So it's not realistic to think we'll ever get to a place where we can ever be 100% accurate about the values of homes. So what we try to do is be transparent as possible about how accurate we are. So if you click on any estimate, or if you go to this website, zillow.com/estimate, you can see a table that breaks out area by area how accurate we are. As Andrew mentioned, a couple weeks ago we released sort of some updates to our models. That means that nationally, when you compare what homes sold for to what their estimate are, on average they're off by about 6%. Right, so if you do the calculation they talked about a little bit of the panel and compare those two, that's what we look like nationally. Locally, we tend to be a little bit worse. The Bay Area market moves fast, there's lots of very unique homes. Tends to be a little closer to 7%. But I really encourage you guys, if you have clients who say, as I heard in the panel, oh, I know my house is worth X, I saw it on Zillow. You know, tell them, you know, what you see on Zillow, what's my team's best effort to the starting point of the value of a home, but it's not 100% accurate. Right? This is how accurate it is. And I don't think there's a lot of potential buyers and sellers who want to risk leaving 6 or 7% on the table because they only consult an algorithm that only knew some of the facts about their house. Right? Certainly when I bought my home, I knew what the model said, but I wanted to know what my realtor thought, somebody who could take in the totality of the property before I put in a bid on the house. The last thing I wanted to talk about was a website Andrew mentioned called Zillow.com/research, which is where after I finish here, I'll put up all these slides, so you can go ahead and download them if you're interested. We also have, as we mentioned, these sort of one-page reports about different markets and the statistics we're seeing in the area. and all sorts of other research we're doing on topics like foreign buyers, what's going on with them? Are they being scared away by the strong dollar? Or more in-depth studies about what's going on with millennials in certain areas. So I encourage you to check it out. I'll be around, so I'll have time to see you guys during the break and answer any questions you guys have. I'd love to get your perspective on what you guys are sort of seeing in the housing. We get a lot of cool data, but you guys are sort of really close to the action and often see and hear things well before we can spot them. It'll be great to see what you guys are seeing here in the Bay Area market. With that, thanks so much.
Thank you for your time.